Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And in this 10-minute moan, I look at the topic of the SNP and Humza Yousaf in particular as having a bit of an issue with Rangers Football Club. Now this is a theory that's not really that difficult to prove, and a feeling that's been felt by many people, obviously, and particularly Rangers fans. And the Scottish Daily Express content editor, Douglas Dickey, has put an opinion piece together for his newspaper. And it is actually quite some reading. So I'll go through his story and I'll give my input as we go along. And at the end, so the headline the Daily Express went with was, "The SNP has a problem with Rangers and it's time to stop pretending otherwise." Humza Yousaf's latest humiliation highlights the hatred that runs through Scottish nationalism for the country's biggest football club. Now, I know Mr. Dickey will get slaughtered by some quarters of society for that 4 words, country's biggest football club. There are many who would disagree and they're quite vocal. And I'm no doubt they'll hate now Mr. Dickey for even suggesting that Rangers are indeed the biggest club in the country. At first glance, Humza Yousaf doesn't have much in common with Elton John, but scratch under the surface and you'll find there are some similarities. Their love of football, for example. John is known for his passionate support of Watford, while Yousaf is a supporter of Celtic. And another trait they share is that sorry seems to be the hardest word for them both. What a fantastic way of pulling Elton John and Humza Yousaf together. So John even sang about it in his 1976 single, and Yousaf appeared to enter politics with the mantra etched in his brain. Little wonder then that he joined the SNP, because even when he was completely wrong, Yousaf seems reluctant to accept it. Don't back down, double down is his motto, and nowhere has this been more evident in his dealings with Rangers. It was 2021 when Yousaf weighed in on a manufactured outrage about a fake video created to make it look like Gers players were singing a song with the lines F the Pope in it. Now we can maybe cut him some slack for his initial interventions, smarting as he no doubt was from Rangers wrecking Celtic's dreams of winning 10 in a row. Something the entire Parkhead faithful had assumed was a foregone conclusion. But as it became clear the whole thing was a bizarre hoax, some contrition wouldn't have gone amiss. But that's not the Humza way. Quizzed in it, Yousaf, who incredibly was Justice Secretary at the time, refused to apologise and started ranting about events in George Square as Rangers fans celebrated. Even that had nothing to do with the Rangers players. The issue raised its head again this weekend when WhatsApp messages emerged that showed Yousaf had moaned to pal Jason Leach about being asked to explain his initial comments. He'd been moved to the health brief when he told Leach he was pissed off at the BBC for asking him about it. Poor Humza. The whole episode unveils a sinister truth about Humza Yousaf and the SNP as a whole. He thought it was fine to prejudge and vilify a group of young men, many of them who had been classed New Scots under the SNP's own definition, without any evidence and with no chance to defend themselves. And he thought it was fine, all because of what football team they represent. Because make no mistake, Yousaf would never have gotten embroiled in a similar incident if Celtic players had been involved. It's unlikely anyone at the SNP would have. Rangers remains one of the biggest vehicles for the Scottish and British identity. The fan base is a broad church, and there are many among the Ibrox faithful who will back independence, but the vast majority fall under the label Unionists. And the SNP hate them for it. Never mind, Rangers are not just a quintessentially British club, but also the quintessentially Scottish club. The club crest is a lion rampant, and no club has provided as many players to the Scottish national team. Historically, Rangers fans have made up the biggest single group within the Tartan Army, but SNP politicians eye this Scottish institution with a degree of suspicion bordering on contempt. I would suggest that quote about Rangers fans having made up the biggest single group within the Tartan Army may not be true nowadays, but it certainly was for large portions of my life until there started being issues between the SFA and Rangers. However, back to the story. The feeling is very much mutual, mind you. Anti-SNP chants and banners have been regular occurrences among the Light Blues faithful, but they aren't in charge of running the devolved executive. Perhaps it's more about who they aren't. Despite SNP assurances that the monarchy would remain in an independent Scotland, there's a huge strain of republicanism running through the Scottish nationalism. Rangers have a portrait of the reigning monarch in the home dressing room and toast to their health each year in the Loving Cup ceremony. In recent years, SNP politicians probably find themselves more at home at Parkhead, where Palestinian flags have become as common as the green and white hoops. While a section of the Celtic fan use the club as a vehicle for their politics, Rangers supporters are much less inclined to equate their football club with their views of the world. The SNP isn't alone in this, mind you. A few weeks ago, former Labour MSP Neil Findlay, who hates his own party more than any nat, took to social media to praise the Celtic fan group, the Green Brigade, for an apparent anti-racism display. No mention of anti-Semitism, of course. It is telling that Findlay felt free to back a group that wreaks havoc all over Scotland, helps run a campaign of intimidation against the police, and recently had to be kettled by cops at an anti-racism rally. Few, if any, politicians would ever praise an equivalent Rangers fan group, no matter how laudable they thought a single initiative was. It's hard to see any other country where politicians would be so openly hostile to the nation's biggest football club. There you go, he said it again. He's going to get pelters for that, isn't he? Rangers were once the establishment club, but the establishment now views them with contempt. Now, I have never hidden this, and I'm very vocal about it. I am indeed a Rangers fan, and indeed a unionist. No prizes for guessing either of them going by previous videos. But that doesn't mean I automatically have to agree with Douglas Dickey. However, I do. And the thing that he talks about most there was when Celtic were in line to win 10 in a row, and Rangers won the league that year. And Celtic fans were obviously devastated. The Rangers players went to Ibrox to celebrate. They were in one of the suites in Ibrox, and they were singing a song where the fans would normally add some add-ons onto it, where they shout F the Pope. Now, there was a video of Rangers fans singing this Neil Diamond song, and someone had cleverly edited in the add-ons, but the Rangers players had their back to the camera at the time. So if you were really stupid, you would possibly think that a room full of Rangers players who, very many, are A, foreign, and B, Roman Catholics, would be involved in such a thing. But Humza took to social media to slaughter Rangers about it. And the video was a complete hoax. No doubt. Well, it might actually have been a Rangers fan, I don't know, but I think more probable it was a Celtic fan up to some naughties. It could have been, however, a Rangers fan who thought this was humorous and may have been edited by one of our own. But who's to say? Anyway, what we do know was Humza went 2-foot tackle straight into it, suggesting that this happened and that it should be looked at by the authorities. When it became apparent that the video was indeed a hoax, nothing, not a word. And I remember that day fondly. Obviously, as a Rangers fan, I was celebrating my team winning the league. And then what he turned to then, his attention was Rangers fans celebrating in George Square. So that became the thing that he wanted to moan about that day. And I understand Humza is a football fan, as I am, and as many of us are, and how your team losing the league could probably be, quite emotional for you. But I doubt anybody with such a position of power in Scotland should let those emotions take over in such a weekend as Rangers winning the league and you making an absolute mess of your allegations. So Humza, as SNP in general, have long been antagonistic against Rangers, and I've seen that as a fan, and I don't think, although I could have blue tinted spectacles on when I'm viewing these things, but I think the way I look at things, try and take a step back, I think even any normal level-minded person would agree with Douglas Dickey in suggesting that Humza Yousaf and indeed the SNP have a bit of a problem with the country's biggest football club. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe and notification bell. Let us know what you think of the video in the comments. I always like to see that, and no doubt we'll have fans from both sides of the old firm having some input into this one. And most importantly of all, unless you're Humza Yousaf or anybody else who can't run the public role without being blighted by their desires and hatred for a football club. Not you, but...
Have a great day. Bye now.